Hi, Miss Eglin here. Today I wanted to show you again how to get on the online textbook, and then we're going to read pages 4 and 5 together. So to access the textbook, I'm going to open up my handout that I have online, and I'm going to hit Control and click on the link. That will take me to the Holt online page, and I had already previously entered my e-textbook username and Lions, and then I confirmed my identity and I scrolled down to Greensburg-Salem School District. So since I've done that, it just let me in again because I have already been there. So I want to go to page 4. I'm just going to type in page 4 and hit next, and I know that's cut off, so it's a little hard to see. And before each selection at the beginning of the collection, there's going to be a literary focus, and this is really going to set up the unit for us, what we want to learn, and give us some of the literary elements that are really important. Now, some of this may be review and some of it may be new, so we do have an activity sheet that will help us go through all this information and sort it out so we can remember it a little bit better, because knowing what type of prose we're reading should help increase our comprehension, because then we know what to expect. So what are the forms of prose? You might think of prose as everything that isn't poetry. In fact, you've been speaking prose all your life. You also read prose every day in your textbooks, in novels, in magazines, and newspapers, and on the web. There are many types of prose, as this organizer shows. Prose is generally divided into fiction and nonfiction. Now at this point, I'm going to zoom in a little more. So we have prose, and then nonfiction, okay, is here. So I think of fiction as fake. These are made up stories, okay, that have characters, a plot. Nonfiction is not fake, okay. These are things that maybe really happened in history, the lives of real people, and those are some types of it. So to get a little more into it, let's read about some types of fiction. Short story. It's just what it sounds like. A short story is a short work of fiction in which a few characters move through a series of events, the plot. They work through a conflict, which is the problem, which leads to a climax or high point and a resolution, or an ending, happy or not. You will study these elements of a short story in depth in Unit 2. Antonio Cruz and Felix Vargas were both 17 years old. They were so together in friendship that they felt themselves to be brothers. They had known each other since childhood, growing up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the same tenement building on 5th Street between Avenue A and Avenue B. So that is the first short story we're going to read, Amigo Brothers by Pierre Thomas. And that is an example of a short story which is meant to be read in one sitting. Novel. If you find yourself looking at 100 pages or more, the work is a novel. In a novel, you meet characters, explore many themes, encounter many conflicts, and probably see subplots, often or other less important plots, unfold within the larger plot. There may be several settings. A novella. If a work is longer than 20 pages but shorter than 100 pages, it is a novella, which is simply a short novel. Mama's back was to me. She was dripping flour from a near-empty canister while my older brother Stacy built a fire in the huge iron-bellied stove. From Song of the Trees by Mildred D. Taylor. Folktale. A folktale is a story with no known author that has been passed on from one generation to another by word of mouth. Folktales usually teach a lesson and often contain fantastic elements or events that could not happen in the world as we know it. These stories tend to travel, so similar characters and plots are found in the folktales of several cultures. There was once a rich man whose wife lay sick, and when she felt her end drawing near, she called to her only daughter to come near her bed. And that's one of the Cinderella tales that we will read later in the semester. So now we have read that first page, so I'm going to advance to the second page. Prose, some types of nonfiction. So these are not fake. Essay and articles. Essays and articles are short pieces of prose that discuss a limited topic. Some people write short personal essays about simple things, such as eating an ice cream cone or taking a dog for a walk. Others write long essays about complex topics such as freedom, respect, and justice. People write articles for different purposes: to explain something, to persuade, to deliver information, or even to make you laugh. On Christmas Eve, I saw that my mother had outdone herself in creating a strange menu. She was pulling black veins out of the backs of fleshy prawns. That's like a big shrimp. The kitchen was littered with appalling amounts of raw food. And that's from Fish Shakes, a short story by Amy Tan. And I say story, but again, it's really an essay because this really happened from her life. Some nonfiction topics are too complex to be covered in this short format of an essay. Biographies and autobiographies are examples of longer types of nonfiction. Biography. If you wanted to know the whole story of a person's life, you'd read a book-length biography. A biography is the story of a real person's life written by another person. Autobiography. An autobiography is the story of a person's life written by that person. After Laos became a communist country in 1975, my family, along with many others, fled in fear of persecution. And that's from An Unforgettable Journey. So we have a chart here of the elements of fiction and nonfiction. So fiction is going to have characters, a plot, setting, time or place, a point of view. So somebody, a narrator, is telling the story. And of course we know if it's first person, they're going to be telling the story with the personal pronoun I. If it's third person or omniscient, it's going to be using the pronouns he, she, they. And the story will be about them, not from their point of view. Many works of fiction convey a theme, which is a universal message about life. And we will be talking a lot about themes this year. Elements of nonfiction. This would be something about real people, events, or ideas, and it's told from the point of view or perspective of the author. It presents facts and ideas. It may mention the historical context of the subject, information about the society and culture of the time. So your turn, and it says analyze the forms of prose. Decide whether each description of a written work is an example of fiction or nonfiction. Number 1, an article supporting a proposed law. So I would ask myself, is that a made-up story? Does it have characters? Does it have a plot? Does it have a point of view? If your answer is no, then that would be nonfiction. 2, a story about a princess and a frog falling in love. So story right there tells us that it is fiction. 3, a story about an imaginary character set during the Civil War. The key word there is imaginary. That means it's fiction. If it was a story about a real-life person who lived during the Civil War, that could be a biography. So our skills focus was to understand and analyze the forms of prose. And the next article that we will read is the reading focus, what skills move you forward with prose. So this is on pages 8 and 9. Reading is like riding a bicycle. You've got to do many things to get where you want to go. Skilled bikers know how to balance, shift gears, and use handbrakes as they ride. Skilled readers also multitask. As a skilled reader, you set a purpose for reading, compare and contrast events and characters, make connections with your prior knowledge, and notice time order. Comparing and contrasting. When you compare, you look for similarities or likenesses. When you contrast, you look for differences. You compare and contrast things every day. For instance, you might compare and contrast the features of your cat to a friend's cat. When you read, you might compare the traits of 2 important characters or a confrontation a confrontation at the beginning of a story to a confirmation at the end. Venn diagram. A Venn diagram helps you recognize similarities and differences. The ones below compare and contrast two stories in collection 1. In the space where the circles overlap, note how the stories are alike. Where there is no overlap, note the differences. So if we have Antonio here, one character from Amigo Brothers, we're going to show how he's different from Felix. But in the middle, we're going to put what they both have in common. Set a purpose for reading. When you read an article about your favorite actor, you read it differently than you read directions for installing a computer program because you have a purpose or reason for reading. When you read directions, your purpose is to understand how to complete a task. You'll read directions more slowly than you would a magazine article because you must understand every step in the directions. How to set a purpose for reading. Before you read, you need to choose a purpose for reading. Previewing a text will help you set a purpose. Look at the text title, headings, and illustrations or pictures. They often reveal reasons for reading it. See the chart below for purposes you might set for reading various forms of prose. So if you're reading a short story, you want to be entertained. An autobiography, you want to know more about that person. A news editorial, so that would be something in a newspaper where somebody's giving an opinion. You want to make your decision on an issue. And the technical directions would help you complete the task. Activating prior knowledge. When you read a text on an unfamiliar topic, you can increase your comprehension by using your prior knowledge. When you activate prior knowledge, you recall what you already know to help you understand something new. Your knowledge can come from your own experience or other information you've heard or read. A model for activating prior knowledge. Read the paragraph below. Then see how one reader might activate prior knowledge. Dinner threw me into despair. My relatives licked the ends of their chopsticks and reached across the table, dipping them into the dozens or so plates of food. Robert and his family waited patiently for platters to be passed to them. So that's from Fish Cheeks by Amy Tan, about an experience where her family had another family over for dinner and they had different cultural customs. So how would you use prior knowledge? I would think, did I ever have a situation where I was using chopsticks, or I didn't know how to use chopsticks, or people had different customs and maybe that was disturbing, like I didn't know what to do. Something like that might be something that helps you increase your understanding. Chronological order. Most narrative texts, true or fictional, are written in chronological order. Writers are using chronological order if they put events in sequence or the order in which they actually happened. An unforgettable journey, an autobiography in this collection, is written in chronological order. It begins with, I was born in a small village, and goes on to relate important events in the writer's life as they happened in time, one after the other. So, the first thing that happened, the next thing that happened during this, while, meantime. All of those words are clues that events are written in chronological order. So it's asking you to write a sentence that compares and contrasts fiction and nonfiction. What is different about them? 2, what purpose would you set if you were going to read a biography? Why? So what would be your purpose for reading? 3, if you were reading an essay about holiday family dinners, what prior knowledge might help you understand the essay? And 4, what would you expect an autobiography to be written? Why would you expect an autobiography to be written in chronological order? And your reading skills: compare and contrast, set a purpose for reading, activate prior knowledge, identify and understand chronological organization and order. So that is it for that reading selection. You can now go ahead and start the activity sheets.